Welcome once again to my YouTube channel, and today we are going to talk about square roots. And we have understood that if you want to get the square root of 4.25, and especially using the table, uh, we, we get to the column of x. And once we get the column of x, and sorry, I want us to talk about the squares first. The squares. It is normally 4.25 times 4.25. Accurately, you will get what you will get using the calculator. This is 4.25. 4.25 times 4.25, which is exactly 18.0625. But using the table, you will not get exactly 18.065 because the accuracy of the answers from the table are to four figures. So how do we get the square of 4.25? Um, we get to read 4.2 from the column headed X in the table of squares, and you get there's a column headed X, you read 4.2, and then you move to the right along this row up to where it intersects with the column headed 5, and then you move this way to the up to where there's a column headed 5, and then you read that value, which happens to be 18.06. So that is the square of 4.25 using the table. Now, a question may arise, what about the square of 42.5? This is very easy. What you need to do, now that we know the square of 4.25, we just have to write this one in standard form. And this one is going to be 4.25 times 10 raised to power 1. And this is the number that we need to square. And now that we know the square of 4.25, it's 18.06 times the square of 10 raised to power 1, which is 10 raised to power 2. And the final answer is 1806. And that is the square of 42.5. What about 425 squared? 425 squared, you still have to write it in standard form, 4.25 times 10 raised to power 2, and everything now squared. Everything squared. And since we know the square of 4.25, this is going to be 18.06 times 10. 10 squared, then squared, is according to the law of indices. This is going to be 10 raised to power 4. And the final submission is going to be A180600. And that is it. So before we wind up, I would want to talk about the square root. I want to talk about the square root. What square root is a number which creates a square such that when it is multiplied by itself, it gives you the square. In general, we know that any positive number has two square roots, one positive and the other negative. And the symbol for the square root is always shown by such a symbol. And therefore, we have several approaches on how to get the square root, and I want to explain both of them. For example, what is the square root of 81? We can use we are going to use the method of using factorization. Using factorization. We all know that For us to get 81, we can factor it out using prime factors, and 2 cannot divide 81, so we directly go to 3. 3 divides 81 to give us 27, and again 3 can divide 27 to give us 3, and there is 9, and again 9 can be divided by 3 to get 3 and 3. So 81 is actually 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So the square root of 81 becomes the square root of the right hand side. And this one becomes now so easy because the root of 81 is the root of 3 squared times 3 squared, because 3 squared because of this and this, and the root of 3 squared is simply 3. So we find that it's the root of 3 times, it's not the root now, the square root of 3 squared is 3, and the square root of 3 squared is 3. Otherwise, this is 9 and this is 9. So you realize that the final answer is 3 times 3, which is easily a 9. And that's how we can get square root using factorization method. So any number can be expressed as a factor of prime factors, as a product of prime factors, and you can get the square root that way. And I may want to give another example, which is the square root of, let us understand the square root of 1764. And 1764, can 2 divide this number? Yes, by 2, 8, 8, 2, I think. Let's confirm that. 1764 divided by 2 is, yes, 882. Can 2 divide 882 further? Yes, we can have 2, 4, 41. 441. We can have 441, yes. But can 2 divide further? No. Let us try 3 now. Can 3 divide 441? Yes, 3. And we have 1 remained 1, and then what is 441? What is 441 divided by 3? 1, 4, because of 12, and then 7. Can 3 divide again? Yes, 3. We have 4, 49, and then 49 is the square of 7. So we can easily have a 7 and a 7. So the square root of 1764 is the same as the square root of 2 squared times 3 squared times 7 squared. And the moment we have the square root of 2 squared, 3 squared, and 7 squared, then we are going to have it as the square root of 2 squared is 2, the square root of 3 squared is 3, and the square root of 7 squared is 7. So the square root entirely becomes 2 times 3, which is 6 times 7, which is 42. So the square root of 1764 is equals to 42. And there we are.